All right, welcome. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know that we'll have more joining as we get going, but I'll get started really briefly. My name is Morgan, and I am Program Manager for Full Stack Academy. I'm really excited to have everyone here this evening to have this Breaking into Cybersecurity LA event. So we'll have a really exciting panel for everyone this evening. We are doing this in partnership with Full Stack Academy and Caltech Ctme. As we get started, I wanted to, for all the attendees, to just kind of let you know how we will be working this evening. So just at the bottom here, you'll see the chat button. So the chat allows you to communicate with other attendees and have a bit of conversation. I may ask you a few questions, including I'm going to launch this poll right now. In that poll, we want you to sort of let us know what your experience is with cybersecurity thus far and a little bit about yourself. If you'd like to raise your hand, you can do so there in the middle. That notifies the host that you have a question, and the host would then be able to unmute you so that you can ask that question. But most of your questions can come through the Q&A. So after the panel, towards the end of the panel, we'll have Q&A time where you can chat your question to the moderator, and they'll be able to answer it live. The panel will answer your question. So thanks everyone for coming. And if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for our event tomorrow night, Decipher and Access. It's a Women in Cybersecurity panel. It should be really, really fascinating. We're really excited to have all the panelists there as well. So there's still space in that one. Be sure to sign up. We have a cryptography workshop on Thursday that's unfortunately sold out, but we'll have more panels and workshops to come. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and throw it over to Rick Heffner, who's the Program Director for Caltech Ctme. He's going to talk a little bit about Ctme, the boot camp that we're launching with Ctme, and why it's so exciting right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Rick, if you want to just unmute yourself. Sorry, you're muted there.
There you go. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Morgan. As Morgan said, I'm Rick Heffner. I'm the Program Director for the Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education, and I'm excited to be helping to kick off tonight's panel. The Center for Technology and Management Education at Caltech is the professional training arm of Caltech. We provide customized educational solutions for technology-driven organizations and individuals. We have a number of offerings in a wide variety of areas, including software and systems engineering, project management, data analytics, operations, supply chain management, technology marketing, leadership, and a variety of other topics. If it's of concern to a technology-driven organization, it's probably in our offering. We are continuing to offer distance learning programs during the pandemic shutdown. So please contact us. We are familiar with the latest distance learning techniques, and we can put together something for your organization or for you as an individual through our public classes. Our specialty is really customizing programs around an organization's challenges. So if you didn't hear something you wanted, please contact us and we can put together a very customized program. That brings us to our interest in cybersecurity. Obviously, as somebody very involved in the technology space, we've been tracking the steady growth of the cybersecurity domain over the last several years. There's a tremendous need really for qualified cybersecurity professionals out there in industry right now. California alone has over 72,000 unfilled cybersecurity positions, and the gap has been growing for several years and is projected to continue to grow. Cybersecurity is a very, very hot topic right now, and the need is very, very great. In response to that, many months ago, we started looking a search for a qualified partner to assist us in delivering some really top-notch cybersecurity training. We have some very high standards at Caltech, and we're not anxious to partner with just anybody. So we needed somebody who had not only a strong reputation as a training provider, but also expertise in the practical application of cybersecurity principles and tools. We like our classes at Caltech to be very practical, to help people develop the skills that they're going to use in industry. And we like them to be taught by professionals who are working in the field, who can impart their experience and their expertise to the students. I'm very happy to say that after talking with a number of different companies, we were very excited for the opportunity to team with Full Stack Academy and to launch our cyber security boot camp. You'll find a lot of information on our website, and I think we'll be giving you links later on here if you're interested in the program. It's probably other information in the emails that you got about this event. But I can just say this is a very pragmatic course. You're developing skills that you're going to be able to use immediately in the workplace. You're going to have a resume, a portfolio of experiences that are going to impress the employers in the area that's looking for. The program is suitable for either somebody who's trying to make major career change. Maybe you came out of school with a degree in a field that's just not very open right now. I can tell you cybersecurity is wide open. And so if you want to take this program as a full-time student, you can do that on an accelerated pace. We also have a part-time program. Maybe you've been out in industry for a while and you're looking for an opportunity to change, get into a more exciting dynamic field, something where really just the sky's the limit in terms of opportunity. So both programs are out there. Details of the program are on the website, and there's quite a lot of help available too. So just want to encourage you to take a look at that. With that, I'll tell you, I'm very, very excited about our panelists for this evening. We're going to have a great discussion. I think you'll get a little bit of a flair for, or a feel for what cybersecurity is all about in today's environment, what some of the challenges are, the opportunities are, and we've assembled just an all-star panel of people. I'm very appreciative to them for their time and their ability to share their expertise with the rest of us. So with that, let me turn it back over to you, Morgan. Or actually, I'm going to turn it over to Donald. Donald, why don't you introduce your panelists?
All right. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for joining us here. I'm going to introduce all the panelists very quickly, and then we're just going to dive right into questions. We'll go through each one of the panelists. We'll give it an opening statement, and then we've a pretty robust discussion to talk about career progression in cybersecurity. We'll start with Mr. Joseph Oregón. He's a proud U.S. Army veteran. He currently serves as Cybersecurity Advisor for Region 9 for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a portion of the Department of Homeland Security. He supports DHS in their mission of strengthening security and resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure. His program coordinates cyber preparedness, risk mitigation, and incident response to provide cybersecurity resources, including assessments to 16 critical infrastructure sectors of both state, local, tribal, and territorial government entities. Mr. Oregón is also a lecturer for the Department of Management Information Systems at San Diego State University and a cybersecurity researcher for SDSU's Cybersecurity Program Office. Mr. Oregón is also recognized for assisting in the development of various cybersecurity programs throughout the state of California, to include California Cybersecurity Integration Center, or CISC, which is responsible for strengthening the state's cybersecurity strategy and intelligence sharing environment. We're also joined by Marian Merritt, and she's actually the lead for industry engagement for the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, or NICE, N-I-C-E. And that's part of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. Marian has over 18 years of experience working in the cybersecurity industry. She previously was with Symantec Corporation as their Director of Cyber Education and Online Safety Programs. In that role, she created a cybersecurity career program for underserved young adults, which launched in 2014. And the Symantec Cyber Career Connection continues in partnership with nonprofit workforce development organizations in several U.S. locations. Marian attended Boston University's Question School of Business for her undergraduate degree, and she holds an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Joshua Belk is the co-founder of OPSEC 360 and the former executive director of the Los Angeles Cyber Lab. in the Los Angeles Cyber Labs, a nonprofit providing cyber threat information to the LA business community. As a previous CSO for the FBI, he led innovations in information management, insider threat, and business data intelligence. He has various security leadership roles with Fortune 200 companies and continues to lead efforts across industry to form cybersecurity standards and collaboration. And my name is Donald Robinson. I'm the CEO of a startup in the Valley called Microsec, focused on container security. I've got a pretty robust background as well in predominantly the U.S. government cybersecurity, both U.S. government and international governments. But I'm the least important person here, so I'm going to kick it off and turn it over to some of our panelists. And I'd like for each one of the panelists just to give kind of an opening statement and talk a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity and what your story is. And so we'll start with Marian. Sure. And I will turn it over to her. You can unmute yourself and just give us a little opening statement.
Well, hopefully you can hear me. All systems are going my end. So how did I get started? Well, first of all, as you heard, I have these 2 degrees in marketing. So the way I got in was I was the product manager for a product called Norton Antivirus back in, well, 97. It's a long time ago. And that was an amazing school for learning about cybersecurity threats at a time when people didn't fully believe in them, at a time when they spread very slowly. And we built up an operation where, you know, we were managing live activity internationally for major corporations and governments. And, you know, it was an extremely exciting time to see the threats emerge and terrifying at the same time. And so I did spend a number of years at Symantec doing a number of different things. My work today with the federal government is really all about all of you. It's about addressing the cybersecurity workforce shortage in a way that brings together a community to address the problems and to find more opportunities to bring in more talent that maybe, you know, we were overlooking in the past, people who are career switchers and returnees and people transitioning from military, just to name a few examples. You heard earlier about the statistic about the number of open positions in the state of California, and I can talk a little bit more about where those statistics come from. That's part of the work that I do. But let me turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Marian. Yeah, I think we'll have a lot to talk about your experience at NICE. Next, I'd like to actually ask Professor Oregón, give a little bit of your background and sort of an opening statement to everybody.
Hi, and good evening. And I'm assuming everybody's good to go. You guys can hear me? Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So, yeah, as said, my name is Joseph Oregón. I started off in IT, information security, when I was a kid, actually. My mom was a programmer, and all my uncles, they worked for IBM, programming as well. And my father was a janitor who, in his evening times, would go and clean schools, and me and my brothers would kind of sneak along with him and play in the computer lab when he was cleaning. So we kind of got into IT and the IT world as children, pretty much off the bat. You know, everything from going in from playing Oregon Trails to start, you know, your tinkering with code and learning Fortran from mom. But that's how we kind of started off, and then it just kind of advanced through high school. And of course, you know how curiosity leads children to want to fix and break things again and more. And that led me right into the IT field. Joined the service from there, and then started asking, you know, those questions back in the 90s. You know, why don't we have an IT group in the military? And then started tinkering and decided to go to school. And, you know, went and kind of went my parents' route with regards to software systems. So I got an undergraduate degree as software systems engineer, then a master's in computer science, and then a master's in IT and information security. So I continued on, and I'm a learning bug. So I'm kind of pushed on to there. And then as 2000s came running around and all the way to through 2020, there's just been this explosion, this need for IT and information security systems, understanding how to break systems and putting them back together, kind of, and helping others kind of, you know, mitigate certain issues with regards to software and regards to their systems, their network systems, became a love. and it's something that I wanted to kind of do. It was and looking at the the workforce in the field, the government seemed an interesting way to kind of break into the field of IT and information systems, and that's more so because the way it was structured initially, there wasn't a lot of emphasis back in the day with regards to IT or information security. So kind of understanding and providing, kind of understanding the field and providing those skill sets to different employers. And the government was great at the time when I first, got in, and still is now, just because there's just such a lack of there's just there's a workforce missing there, that it kind of allowed me to fill a lot of different roles and kind of dabble with a lot of different aspects of IT and information security. And I kind of just matured into the position where I am now, and balancing both a technical and an executive portfolio, and assisting where I can throughout the state and throughout the United States for CISA. And for the folks at home who don't know what CISA is, we're the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and we're kind of like the risk managers for the United States as it pertains to cyber and physical. And we've been around now. We were DHS initially, but we kind of evolved into CISA, and we've been around now for about a year. And that's my intro there. Back to you, Donald. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Very interesting background. I want to dig into that a little bit more later. Now I'd actually like to hear from Joshua. I know you've got sort of an interesting path that took you into cybersecurity. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Good evening. Thanks, Don. And it's exciting to see everybody here tonight. I really appreciate Caltech putting this together and allowing us to reach out to everyone. The way that I came into this was pretty much the least traditional path you could probably think of. And I had no idea that I would ever end up in this career to begin with. I mean, when I was 20, I remember that we didn't even have the internet. It just kind of came up on dial-up, and we had a modem, and it was like that funny noise, and You've Got Mail was sort of a thing. And it was, you'd wait 20 minutes just to get pages to load, and you kind of just thought, like, is this going to work or what? But how do people communicate? Is the phone calls and different things. You would see people driving around with a mobile phone in their car, and you'd laugh at them and think, what's so important that they can't wait to get where they're going and then make a phone call? And society has just gone completely the opposite direction. So back then, I joined the military, and I was in military police, and it was security of a different sort. And as I worked through that for about 10 years, I ended up managing different programs and not working the beat, so to speak. And that helped me understand that there was more to security than just policing and helping victims and responding to things, and that there was actually programs to manage. At the time, it was physical security and access control, which we all know today that access control is a big part of cyber. And so it was a sort of an interesting segue over the course of 15 years before I actually hit cybersecurity and InfoSec. And after leaving the military full-time and going to the reserves, I ended up getting a degree in social science of all things. And that's because I like human behavior. And I'm always intrigued about why people do what they do. And that's not a natural fit for cybersecurity necessarily. At least back then it wasn't. And I ended up joining the FBI, and working through some of the programs that we had there, identified that there were systems that needed to be secured and people who needed education and training. And you'd say, well, gosh, it's the FBI. Like, what are you talking about? And you just have to think that we were growing and emerging along with the rest of society. And as bad guys became smarter, so did we. And I was able to help lead a lot of initiatives that ultimately ended up in us having a cyber career track in the FBI. But back then, it didn't exist. And it's just unbelievable to see how much things have grown today, whereas now we're able to have a conversation like this. It's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. I appreciate that. So it's interesting, you know, marketing, from Oregon, you talked about, you know, from morning, and your dad was a janitor, and you're a cop, Joshua, getting into cybersecurity. So we got quite a few diverse views looking at this. One of the things, Marian, you talked about earlier about where did the statistics come from? So I think we hear a lot in the news that there are a lot of job opportunities in cybersecurity, and there's a shortage. But there are a lot of different types of jobs in cybersecurity. And so I wonder if you could just talk about the statistics of, you know, why there's a job shortage, where they come up from, and, you know, what role the National Institute of Standard Technologies has in helping out with that.
Absolutely. And I wish it was a really easy response, but there are some layers here. First of all, cybersecurity is still an emerging category of work, and the need to define what that work is, you know, that's something that the government can't do on its own. So let me just say a little bit about NICE, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. So despite the name, we look after things, everything around the workforce, you know, from education, training, development, certification, and we work with a community of people like you to have that conversation. So NICE has been around for a number of years. It's relatively new in the federal government, and it sits within the US Department of Commerce. And so on the one hand, you can say, you know, cybersecurity, you know, is a commercial need, but it's also related to our economic security as a nation. So you very much want people in the federal government providing guidance, and, you know, our friends at CISA do that, and we work very closely with them. So that's an area that's a real positive. One of the work products from NICE that many people are familiar with is the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. And what the framework started out as was a solution to a problem really within the federal government, which was, we're not calling work that we do in cybersecurity the same things. We don't use the same job titles. We don't have the same specifications for how you qualify for those jobs. So if somebody wants to move from one agency to another, it's really hard. And there were other reasons we needed to sort of come together and have some standard language and definitions, because when we spoke with our partners in the academic side of things who want to help develop the talent, again, if we're not talking about the same ways you qualify, what skills you need to develop, what knowledge you need to have on day one, it's all very difficult to have a very smooth career pathway. So over time, and in partnership with the private sector, government, and academia, the framework was created, and it divides cybersecurity work into 7 categories. And within those 7 categories are 52 work roles. But what I think would be important for everyone here to recognize is 52 work roles sounds like I'm saying there's 52 different jobs. And what work roles mean are, again, these sort of types of work that you might do. So if you're in a smaller organization, you might be one of 3 people and have 20 work roles, which sounds daunting, but I promise you, it actually happens in small businesses. More typically, you'll have a distributed team. But if you look at the NICE framework up on our website, and the NICE website is at nist.gov/NICE, we have so many resources for people interested in careers in cybersecurity from every walk of life. So you can view our webinars, and you can look at the resource framework. You can join our working groups. There's a lot. So the framework, okay, now we have a platform for talking about cybersecurity work. And what's happened is the federal government has adopted it. So if you look at job descriptions, position descriptions on usajobs.gov, you start to see similar language being used to describe work. And increasingly, the private sector is adopting it. And in fact, as of, I think it was May this year, if you're a government contractor, so big defense companies, they're going to start adopting it too. So it's increasingly picking up momentum as a sort of a standard in the industry. It shouldn't mean loss of flexibility. It shouldn't mean that you can't sort of create the kind of roles you need for your organization. But it does mean when an organization is looking at everyone in their group who handles something with cybersecurity, you can start to spot where you might have a skills gap. And that might mean we need to create another role. Or it might mean I need to send some people for additional training. And you can start to see how it really helps organizations unify what they're doing across cybersecurity. So another thought. We talked about the statistics, the daunting number of open positions, the gap in the workforce. And we could debate where those statistics come from and how meaningful they are, but know that the website cyberseek.org, cyberseek.org, is a website built by Burning Glass and CompTIA. And we at NICE fund that through a grant. So those are federal dollars, your tax dollars at work to help you have better information about where are there open positions and what kinds of positions are they, as well as salary information, career pathway information, and then particularly of importance to all of you, what does it take to qualify for those positions? And of course, it's going to vary by type of role. In some places like the state of California, we have a lot of defense related work. So security clearances, for example, could be part of that work. But I think as a job seeker or somebody interested in the career, cyberseek.org is just a great place to get a lot of information. So I think those were some of the key things we wanted to talk about, at least from just to kick things off from the resources we have at the federal government. And I do wanted to say, Donald, I think it's very interesting that so many people on this call started in a federal role. I came to it late, and I work remotely from my home in Los Angeles, even under normal circumstances. So that's just a plug for federal work is changing, and it was changing even before the pandemic. And while it's not totally common for remote work to be, you know, the thing, it is increasingly being acceptable, and a lot of recruiting is happening right now for the federal government for remote work. So very exciting times.
That's great. Thank you, Marian. Well, so we see that there are 54 different work roles that are being defined in cybersecurity, but I see from the polling that about 64% of the people on the call right now are really beginners and just sort of discovering the world of cybersecurity. And so Joshua, you had an interesting transition story. So can you go into a little bit more specific? So you were in one job role and then you had to you transitioned over time into a career in cybersecurity. What was that transition like?
I think the first part of that is stressful, right? I mean, here I am facing the same thing that everybody who's just looking at joining or taking on a new task does. They say, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to know? What's accurate? Where do I get the right information? How can I trust what I'm seeing? Everybody says you need a certification of some sort. Which one do I get? How do I get it? And the list just goes on and on and on. And one thing that I felt really helped me kind of steer that direction was I knew that the security principles were going to be the same, but there wasn't, and there still really isn't a great comparison between the two. But I was able to somehow start making just really daily comparisons, you know, and I started thinking about, well, how do these processes and programs work? And along the way, I started to realize that everybody doesn't know everything. And that sounds like common sense, but when you talk to security professionals, you think, oh man, they must know all this stuff and I don't know enough to be in the room or to even participate in the conversation. And the truth is, there's just too much to know for any one person. Once I got that kind of sorted out, I realized, okay, I can do this and I can leave a world of physical security where it's, you know, it's very responsive, reactive, and it's cameras and it's gates and guns and guards and etc. to something that is more about it's logic driven. It deals with the kind of programs and software you're using. It deals with human behavior, and yet the protocols are kind of the same, you know. And I ended up deciding to demystify hacking altogether and went and got ethical hacker certified, not because I wanted to be a pen tester, but you know, I got tired of people saying, oh, they got hacked, you know, about everything in the news, people getting hacked all the time. And you kind of wonder like, well, how did it happen? You know? And so I took the certification and I really struggled at first, but then I started grasping it. And afterwards, I remember there was like a 6-month period that I really just read like every day the news just how were people being hacked, what was happening, going to places that are typical for us to get our news. And that I started to see the themes emerge, which made it a lot easier and built my confidence, and I think that's what people on the call want to know is like, how can you transition and not feel so inadequate? Because a lot of people transition in the middle of their life and they've had one career and they go do something else. That's what I did. It was similar, but it wasn't the same. You couldn't apply let's call them heavy tactics. You had to apply things that were a lot different. You're dealing with a lot of people who, quite frankly, they have more of an engineering mind. There's a different type of security worker in InfoSec, and engaging with them, was just something that you had to pick up.
Gotcha. Thank you, Joshua. So it's interesting thinking about the career changes, but I think another big part of cybersecurity and the breadth of the field is the types of people who are in it. And, it's not a static culture. I think it's a pretty diverse culture. So, Joe, you told me earlier last week, we were talking, and you've got sort of an interesting cultural background, and you said you even recently shaved your mohawk, yet you're an advisor to one of the most important government agencies that we have for cybersecurity. So can you talk to us a little bit about just the breadth of people, and experiences and cultures and diversity that's actually present in cybersecurity today?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to kind of add a little bit to what Joshua had mentioned with regards to transitioning, and then whether you're, mid-career or you're starting off at school. I have had a lot of students, and there's a lot of similarities in the questions as, oh my gosh, where do I start, and just doing your research on cybersecurity, because there's so many facets of cybersecurity that might interest, whether it's forensics, whether it's advising, whether it's taking a look at malware, reversing malware. And there's just so much space. There's just so much space for individuals with different backgrounds, with different education, to kind of transition into some of those positions that brings a different perspective, a unique perspective, which I've found it to be very valuable in the work field, especially working with a lot of my colleagues in the federal government. And that's coming from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different educations that are all kind of merging into cybersecurity to provide that perspective, or that different perspective, in order for us to get ahead of a lot of issues. And with regards to the culture, and it's a huge cultural change right now. I see it. It's still that we still have, and with regards to different kind of cultures. I'm Puerto Rican. So my family is Afro-Rican, so Afro-Caribbean. So, we didn't see, with regards to minorities and women in the workforce, there's been a lot of underrepresentation, if you will. So I'm starting to see it change slightly, over the course of the years that I've been working in the government. I'm starting to like what I see. The change with regards to, everything from, different perspectives, people from different cultures, kind of merging in, even with regards to like work-life balance and, accepting, just the nature of accepting individuals and being socially, accepting to just all walks of life. I'm starting to see that really open up, and I'm starting to like what I see, and would love to see and continue to see it grow. In a household full of daughters, that's a big push for me, is to make sure that they understand that, there's a ripe workforce out there ready for anyone and everyone walking into. So it's a big push that we do here at the house. So I definitely want to kind of give that a kind of a shout out with regards to seeing that continue along this path. Working at CISA, and the colleagues that I have worked with there at the Bureau, other federal agencies, there's definitely been a huge cultural change with regards to, seeing different walks of life. A lot of us get to work from home, right? With regards to cultural change. it's not all, you know, we're starting to move slightly away from requiring, you know, the business suit and tie to kind of, you know, relaxing in some respects to, you know, your day-to-day work attire and being able to, you know, wear khakis or wear shorts or come into work in that nature. I mean, as you mentioned, Donald, about a week and a half ago, I had a mohawk, right? So, and I work for a federal government. I work for the federal government. So, you know, there is some leniency with regards to, you know, our day-to-day operations. Of course, when you have to present and you have to, you know, you do have to dress up, and it is expected for you to, you know, to present yourself well. But there is a lot of leniency with regards to day-to-day work-life balance, schedule shifts, working from home. A lot of us right now, because of COVID, all work from home, and that's something that the federal government is starting to kind of look towards to say, hey, you know, this might be a model that we can sustain in some respects. So there are a lot of us that, you know, are provided equipment to the, you know, at the house that we can continue our day-to-day operations, regardless of what those kind of operations may be, if they're, you know, incident response or you're providing some type of vulnerability assessment or pen test. But, you know, with regards to that change and work-life balance, the culture change is starting to be something that's we're really taking notice, and we're really proud that it's moving in that direction. Thank you, Don.
Awesome. That's really good. Going back to you, Marian. So I see some questions coming up in the chat box. You mentioned CompTIA earlier. What is CompTIA, and what are the other similar organizations similar to them, and what do they mean for people coming into cybersecurity?
So one of the requirements you'll see when you start looking at openings, job descriptions, are certifications. And there are a number of different organizations. Some of the best known are CompTIA, SANS, GIAC. You know, I don't want to embarrass myself and skip over some partners of ours, but suffice it to say, it's a robust community. And the goal is to have some kind of proxy. When I can't know your work from working with you, how do I evaluate whether or not you have some knowledge and skill? And they approach this in different ways. Some of them are sort of focused on knowledge that you can acquire from, you know, taking a course and studying and then passing an exam. Others have some kind of hands-on keyboard, you know, kind of practical element. So they vary. They vary significantly in cost and the amount of time that might go into preparing for them. There is some abuse or misuse of some of the more advanced certifications in job listings. And we see that sometimes in industry when they don't fully understand what, and I'm going to use the example of a CISSP is. So a CISSP implies that you should have some years of experience and you're pretty, you know, advanced. But we see it listed as a requirement for entry-level jobs. So, you know, we're still working to educate the workforce community about what they should be asking for. And we'd certainly like to see fewer certifications required as a you know, baseline to meet, simply because it can be very expensive for an applicant to acquire so many of these certifications. So we really are pleased when we see people looking at this or this or this, and allowing people to demonstrate their qualifications in a variety of ways. And it could be college degree or years of experience or a, you know, training program or an apprenticeship. You know, there's a lot of varied ways people are entering into pathways, and they should all be valid if the skills are there.
Gotcha. So you don't have to have a college degree. There are various certifications, but it seems like experience is probably one of the biggest grading factors for getting a job in cybersecurity today. So I'm going to go back to you, Joe. What skills do you need to get into this career field? So if experience is important, what skills do you need?
Yeah. So, and gracious, there's just so many. And I should say that even with, even with the ability to, you know, pass the exam and achieve a certification, there's also still the need for education to kind of understanding the fundamentals you're definitely the kind of groundwork and understanding the breadth of IT and information systems. But that does push us to, different avenues of information systems, such as forensics, memory forensics, and as I mentioned earlier, incident response, reversing malware, even understanding how policies and impact the organization, or be able to speak towards business needs with regards to an IT system. There's just so many different there are just so many different skill sets that coming in or shifting in with a different perspective, it definitely increases the knowledge base of our workforce, and it's something that we definitely need to continue marching towards.
Gotcha. So kind of extending that, one question I get a lot, and Joshua, I'll turn this to you, is because there is such a big breadth, and if you look at IT from networking to endpoint devices to mobile to software development, forensics and cryptography and artificial intelligence, and what technology should I learn first? Joshua, or what set of technologies? Where would you start?
That is a tough question. It depends. So let's back up for a second and look at the different roles that I see as somebody in the private sector. Typically you've got your bits and bytes engineer types who are creating code, they're creating tools, they're creating software, they're creating something, they're building something for a client who has a need to communicate in some way. And then you've got on the far other end, policy people who are putting together the structure and the foundation of like, how are we going to interact with this tool, and what does that mean? And then in between, you've got people who actually use the tool and have to abide by what was created from the engineer, and also the policy that was in place by the people who created those left and right parameters. So when you say, what's the thing that you need to learn first, this is sort of a catch-22. It really depends, one, on which one of those three job series did I kind of say that you might like best, and then, discover like which part of it is important for you. What does that mean? So if you're an engineer, you got to learn how to code. So you got to know how security tools work, and you've got to understand, the basics of how is your tool going to be broken if you're a security engineer. And if you're a policy person, then you want to understand, maybe you don't need to know a tool specifically, but you need to understand that the people that you're guiding through, who are going to have to use these tools, every policy can't be written in such a way where, and when we say a policy, we're talking here, let's break that down for a second. Let's say you create a policy that says, every user is going to have a single sign-on, right? And we kind of get used to this in a way where we have one sign-on, and it gives us access to all of our applications at our office or our school or our work. And that didn't always exist. You used to have to log into multiple things. As we're working remote, there might be a policy that says we have to VPN. And does the policy person need to know how a VPN works from front end to back end? No, but they do need to understand the disruption in the business flow if it doesn't work correctly. And so answering your question is that cybersecurity, we're learning, is just all over the map. And there's not one specific technology. If you're somebody in the middle and you work in a security operations center, then you've got to understand tools that help you resolve and identify threat intelligence or indicators of compromise. There's dozens. There's a lot of free stuff out there, which I think people don't realize. You can go to any number of the large vendors out there, and you can get a free account for a lot of their software, which is limited capability. But what does it do? It gives you exposure, and it doesn't cost anything. It's just about you figuring out what it is that they offer and how it works and how it interrelates. So I don't want to plug any particular one because they all offer something different and they're useful in their own ways. Chat me up if you want to know more. I guess that's what I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, Joe, you might have some extensions to, or some augmentation to that. So I wonder if you could add your thoughts.
Yeah, a lot. So a lot of where kind of rubber meets the road, and it's definitely utilizing the tools around you to further your education. And this is for anyone, regardless if you're mid-career or if you're beginning, you're starting out, whether you're in high school or middle school. There's just a plethora of tools that you can use to kind of dabble. And there's so many platforms for education, for free education out there that you can basically do it yourself, a DIY off of YouTube, and learn some of the basics that you need in order to kind of start to expand your knowledge. And I would definitely highly advise anyone that's wanting to get into the IT field, information security field, to take a look at the different tools, defensively, offensively, even some of the tools for creating software or tinkering with hardware. Learn to break it and learn to put it back together again. And as it becomes a love, you're learning the method in which you'll learn will increase. When you're forced to learn something because you're going to school, it's kind of like, yeah, all right, I have to learn that. But when you're really learning it because you're interested in it and you're taking your own time to kind of do the research and understand what tools are out there, what makes this thing work, it's definitely it'll definitely push your learning to a good limit where you'll start to understand exactly what may interest you in the IT field. And to kind of just relay off of Joshua's comments, definitely take a look for some of the vendor tools that you can utilize for free out, regardless if it's an operating system or a VPN or even it's AI. So they have some AI engines that they provide for folks online, and you can tinker with the code for that. There's just so many possibilities for you to expand your knowledge base and identify an interest that if you have that will, there's definitely a way out there for you. Thank you, Don.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, ma'am.
So,
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I would just encourage, I know we've dropped a plug for CyberSeek, but one advantage you can have as somebody considering how you're going to enter the field and where you might specialize is you can start to see where the greatest market opportunities are. Wouldn't want you to spend a lot of time preparing for some very focused niche area and the demand is declining. So that would be something for you to just keep an eye on. And to be really real, we do know that entry-level roles are very challenging. And when you walk a non-traditional path, maybe you're returning to the job market or career switching, it's just slightly harder. And we need to be honest about that. So if I can share some things that I'm seeing have worked really well for people are seeking out affinity groups, seeking out your community, because asking people who've already done this, how did they do it? What did they do? Who helped them? Can give you a little bit of a leapfrog on trying to sort this all out yourself. And what I mean by affinity group, you can, for example, on LinkedIn or on Facebook or other social media, find membership groups who will, probably allow you to communicate with the members. It's at no cost, right? You're not attending meetings where there's a cost, there's no overhead. So if you're a woman in cybersecurity, which goes by the acronym WISIS, fantastic. I'm seeing people always helping each other with ideas. They have study buddies. I'm practicing for this certification exam. Can I get a few people? We'll remotely study together. It's pretty exciting stuff. And then for people who are a minority, but also women, there's the ICMCP. There are a number of these groups, and I would just encourage you to find them because this is a community of people that typically likes to help each other. And, we do recognize that when you don't have experience, getting that first experience, whether it's an internship or, a co-op or, doing volunteer work even, it can feel like such a hurdle. And I'll just use the example of a young person that I met recently, only online. I've never met him personally, but I found him because he was tweeting about the cybersecurity questions he had in his educational process. And he had also created a blog, kind of for himself, to reinforce the lessons he was learning, like, oh, I built this lab at home and I'm doing these exercises and I learned what works and what doesn't work and I'm having this problem. And by documenting his process and the exercises he was going through, picking up on what you were saying, Joseph, when he went to look for a job, he was able to leverage not only his code that he had stored on GitHub and other things, but also the community he'd built on Twitter helped him, find jobs to apply for. And the blog served as evidence of the work that he was able to tell people he'd done. Very non-traditional, but very creative, and it worked for him. And I'm also going to drop into the chat a link to a webinar we did on this topic of getting the first job in cybersecurity. And there's some practical advice there given by the National Cyber League about building your own home lab. So hopefully that will be of use to all of you.
Oh, that's really helpful. It's interesting, we're talking a little bit about getting into cybersecurity, but I think one of the questions in the Q&A was around, well, is AI going to take over cybersecurity in the future? So I think there is a big question about, Marian, you mentioned there are certain fields that are kind of going by the wayside, but there are probably a ton more that are growing. So is this a relevant career field to actually get in the future? Is this just a flash in the pan right now, or is this going to be, a systemic thing? And so, Joshua, I wonder if you could sort of lead that one off right now. And how do you see cybersecurity as a career field for the future?
I mean, security in itself isn't going to change. Okay, think about it. There's a point there of victimization. There's a point of loss, of risk, of things where, why do we have security at its most common fundamental level? That's not going to go away. Where the question comes in with security tools and a lot of other things in life with AI and machine learning, let's say those things are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They're going to grow because they're going to get perfected. They're going to get worked into different process flows, and they're going to become more effective. The people who want to circumvent AI and machine learning are also going to get smarter at that. So it's not going to be the only way that we kind of, like, we don't have a golden key that we can just put out there and kind of protect everything. And as we, I think of it a little bit like poker, we ante up. People keep putting in, they keep putting in into the pot, and eventually somebody cashes out. But, one thing that AI does is it allows us to really get after problems on a larger magnitude. And so you think about the purpose of AI is really to discern different patterns that are happening across a major data lake. So you have this massive amount of information, and how do we look at that and pull out things that are happening kind of under the radar? Because I think one of my, the things that I gained as experience with the FBI is our ability to look at problems and then say, well, where are we going to trigger the defenses of somebody else? And part of it is, through the investigations that we were part of, we could see that different malware attacks were carried out and people went under the radar for, years. Why is that? They got smart. They weren't greedy. They weren't trying to get too much done at the same time. And they created a pathway where they could just continue to maneuver. And AI and machine learning are there today in a positive way to help us identify bad actors and people who are doing exactly that, running under the radar. There's going to be a ton of new jobs associated to that, but somebody asked a question in the chat, and my response was that some traditional jobs will get automated by AI, but other ones will exist because now we have to adapt the tools. We have to still respond. Definitely, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Gotcha. Thanks. That's good. I don't know if any of the other panelists want to comment just on the future of cybersecurity and how it's changing and how you see it.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on what Josh said. I think AI is an exciting tool, but we need people. We need people to create the tools and use the tools and tell us when the tools aren't working properly for us because things are getting past them. So yeah, you may enter the field in one role and 5 years later, that role may not look the same. And I think that's just been the nature of the last 20 years of cybersecurity. It's evolving and we need to continue to stay on top of what we all need to stay safe. The threats and the threat actors keep changing and their motivations keep changing. I mean, having been around since the early days of antivirus, the idea that nation states would be able to do as much as they can electronically, it seemed like science fiction, but you know, that's here now. So we need every tool that we can to help us.
Yeah, and if we take a look at, and if we take a look at systems that are still around these days that are 20 or 30 years old, it'll show you that, like SCADA systems, right, your supervisory control and data acquisition systems, they are kind of like those plant systems that you know, manage generators and open valves and things of that nature, and they're really built around kind of antiquated systems, right, that are very open to problems with regards to cybersecurity, with security. So, and we're still managing those in this 2020. You know, and as Joshua and Marian mentioned, with regards to AI, it's, you know, some automated processes will go away, but it's also going to create other avenues for new growth, and that's just pretty much how the nature of the beast is. And as you're in this system, even with AI currently, I mean, what we have, you know, behavior analytics that provide, you know, certain, you know, that identify certain anomalous behavior on networks. Well, they still requires an analyst to look over various logs, identify false positives. And so there's still a human component to all of this. And I don't foresee AI overtaking, you know, all of those jobs anytime soon. So this is a huge field, and it's going to continue to be a big field going past 2020.
Great. So one of the things I'd like to wrap up, and I'm going to go to each panelist and get some of the specifics about, you know, what specific resources can I actually tap to stay up to date and to enter into this field. I know we're here talking about some of the programs in, you know, Caltech and Cybersecurity Bootcamp that I think is a great resource, and, you know, I would encourage everybody to look into that. And I wonder if you can go into some more detail. You know, Joe, you talked about some tools. Marian, I think there are some resources at NIST. Joshua, your experience in the FBI and how you got into it and the certifications that you got. You mentioned CEH. So I'll go Marian, Joshua, then Joe to close it out. And I wonder if you can talk about some of the specific resources that we can tap into to really stay up to date and enter the field and stay up to date when we're there. Marian.
Absolutely. So I can't say enough about the work that we do, self-serving as it may be, at NICE. We have a community that it welcomes all of you. We have monthly working group meetings, for example, where people will come on and talk about new forms of cybersecurity work or training programs or educational programs. There's just a lot of opportunity to jump in and network and meet other like-minded people, and just to see, you know, kind of what the trends are and what's happening. So if you visit the NICE website, again, it's at nist.gov/NICE. We would love for you to sign up for a working group, sign up for webinars. You can sign up for a quarterly newsletter where we'll update you about interesting careers that people have, like digital forensics people in the LAPD, things like that. There's a lot going on. And we have a very robust community here in Southern California as well. So I really just want to encourage you all to do some research and understand what excites you most about this field, and join the communities that I've mentioned here that make sense for you, because you can get a lot more mentoring and coaching along the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Joshua?
And yeah, I think, you know, I was the executive director for the Los Angeles Cyber Lab, which is in LA, and it's an organization that provides threat security, or I'm sorry, threat intelligence to businesses for free. I would encourage everyone in your pursuit of education, and I don't mean formal education, but let's just call it general knowledge, go to lacyberlab.org, click on the Tools for LA Business link, and sign up for the Daily Threat Report. In the Daily Threat Report, they've got a publication that comes out Monday through Friday, and it gives you the sort of latest and greatest news in InfoSec. Why is that important? Well, as I was building my knowledge, for those 6 months where I really got in there and read everything, it was a list like that where I could just go through the news and read about how are compromises happening, where are they happening from, who's who in the organization. And that gets important because when you go on a job interview and someone starts talking about a certain type of incident or what your thoughts are about a certain situation, current events are something that everyone needs to understand. And as things continue to evolve, you can't do anything but fall behind if you stop reading the news, and there's so much news out there. This kind of aggregates a little bit of it, gives you a nice sweet spot to find really good cybersecurity information. I think Joe mentioned it earlier when he said, be your own advocate in a way where you go and learn things that are interesting to you. When I wanted to learn about malware, I didn't really want to learn about how to write it, but I wanted to see how it interacted and use the tools. So yeah, I took an old laptop, put Kali Linux on it, rolled it up, and I had no experience with any of that at all. I YouTubed everything, it was great. And even now, when I see something I don't understand, it's not that we know everything. We just go to YouTube and I will look up, okay, what has been going on lately with this? And oftentimes I kind of surprise myself and go, man, how did that get by me? What's going on? And I feel like maybe where have I been? But ultimately, what does that do that allows you to focus on the things that you care about, things that are interesting to you? And my final kind of thought on all that would be, make it relevant to your life and your situation. And this is probably the most important part, is anything in cybersecurity that, do you leave your home unlocked when you go out the door? You leave your car unlocked in the parking lot? I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But when, do you change your passwords? Do you use two-factor authentication? I mean, the questions are the same, they're just applied different. And if you can take any part of cybersecurity and sort of tie it to your own life, you will understand it immediately. And that will be very helpful in trying to grasp new knowledge and understand how everything interrelates.
Okay, so there's a lot there, right? Those are words from folks here, Miriam and Joshua with tons of experience. I would probably approach it very similarly, but I would definitely, and I think Miriam touched on it briefly, is start doing the research in your area. If you wherever you live, identify if there are IT groups, information security groups. Take a look at meetups. Take a look at some of the apps that are available for meetups. If there's a mashup in the group that or in your downtown area that deals with, software or developing software or giving free seminars, get involved with your community. That's actually a fantastic way not only to pass and collect knowledge, but also identify who's who in your backyard, because you'll have a lot of executives. And I give an example in San Diego. We have a CISO roundtable, right, that we started back up many years ago. But we have roughly over 100 plus CISOs for the Southern California area that get together, closed door, and Chapman rules, and we speak towards all kinds of things, right, with regards to information security, on tools, on resources. As a group, we also participate in an outreach where we invite, the local community. We work with other entities such as OWASP, like the Open Web Application Security Project. We have one down in San Diego that gets together and does, and does these meetups, and, at a local bar or, at a local cafe. And then we get together and we just rub elbows, so to speak. Infracard is a huge one. Infracard is a nonprofit a partnership between the FBI and members of the private sector, where we take a look at the critical infrastructure, 16 sectors, and we identify, and we have individuals that kind of identify the needs for those sectors, IT being a huge one. Infracard is a fantastic resource for your local area. Southern California has the CCOE, or the Cyber Center of Excellence, and in San Diego. And I'm in Southern California area. So from LA all the way down, you have a lot of different groups who provide a lot of opportunity for you to know who's in your backyard when it comes to different organizations, different CISOs, different C-level personnel, regular administrative folks and analysts that work for some of these large private and public sector organizations that are just as in love with this field as we are, and want to continue seeing it prosper and grow. So definitely get involved. If your school, Caltech, these kind of opportunities, this boot camp that they provide, these are fantastic resources. And if you can, part-time to do it, I highly suggest, taking that route and doing that research and finding out what's available to you and continue your learning path. And that's a huge one. Identify what certifications that are of interest and continue your growth. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, if I could
Joe.
I know you said closing remarks. Can I just say one more thing?
Go ahead, Marian. Yeah, go, shoot.
Joseph, you said 16 critical infrastructure sectors, and it reminded me something I wanted to say. If you are somebody who's a career switcher or pivoting or returning, consider what your experience already is in. If you come from healthcare, know that the healthcare industry is the #1 attacked sector in our critical infrastructure. These are, determined by the federal government as the sectors that are, vulnerable. So it could be transportation, finance, healthcare, communications. There's just so many. So 16. But think about what you already have in pocket as leverage, and pay attention to what the needs are of industries you already know well, because cybersecurity, you can learn it. But if you already know how a hospital runs, you are light years ahead of the pack. So just something to consider.
Thank you, Marian. No, that's actually a good add. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Joshua, Joe, and Marian. You've given us a lot of insight. Just to summarize some of the key things I heard here. One, cybersecurity is a massive field, from lawyers to marketing to education to forensics to cryptography. It really is a role for everybody. It's interesting, the proliferation of meetup groups and educational resources and opportunities you mentioned mentorship that you were doing, Marian. I think it's a field where there's a lot of passion, a lot of people who, learned from, just sneaking into a computer room at a school like Joe did. And, that just shows the passion that a lot of people have for it. And I think that's also a promising field to get into. And it seems like there are lots of resources to further your career. And I agree completely, and I will sort of emphasize what you said, Marian. If you're new to it, whether you have domain knowledge as a career switcher or you just have a passion in something, it could be cars or power grids, there is a role in cybersecurity where you can apply that domain knowledge to a really fascinating and interesting and future-proof job in cybersecurity. And there are lots of resources to help you advance your skills, including the one with Caltech here and Full Stack Academy. So with that, I will close out and I'd like to turn it over to Morgan for some final remarks.
Thank you, everyone, for the panel. Thank you, Marian, Joseph, Joshua, for being on the panel. Thank you so much to Donald for being our lovely moderator. And thank you, Rick, for kicking us off at the top of the hour. I'm going to want to do one more plug for tomorrow's panel. I added the Eventbrite link there in the chat. The executive director of WISIS will be at that panel. She'll be speaking, Lynn Dome. It's going to be really, really interesting, especially for women looking to break into cybersecurity. I definitely recommend that panel. Wonderful discussion. Thank you, everyone, so much. A lot of great resources, CyberSeek, LA Cyber Lab, WISIS, NIST.gov/NICE. We have so much to share with you all. So be sure to keep an eye out for a follow-up email, and it'll have the link to this, the recording of this panel, so that you can, if you didn't catch all of the resources, you'll be able to catch them once again. Thanks everyone, and we'll go ahead and sign off. Have a great evening. Thank you.